This video is about how to use PowerSchool data with Excel pivot tables. Let's first identify what a pivot table is. A pivot table in Excel will automatically sort, count, total, or give an average of data stored in one table or spreadsheet, and then it will display those summarized results in a second table. Now the example we're going to do here is discipline, and we're going to compare that to student ethnicity. So let's find our discipline logs. To find the discipline logs, we would go to Special Functions, and then on the Special Functions page that appears, we would actually scroll down to where it says Search Log Entries. And when the log entry page comes up, it's going to ask you what type of log type it is. In this case, we're doing discipline. You could do others, but we're doing discipline. It's going to ask you log subtypes. In this case, we want all of them, so we're going to leave it blank, but you could select a specific one. Normally, you would enter in a date range where it says entered on or before this date. We're going to leave it blank, but that's going to go back several years. But you can enter a date range and then hit Submit. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to do a quick export. Now, on the quick export, it's going to ask you, what do you want to export? Well, remember, we are comparing ethnicity to discipline subtypes. So let's take a look at the fields that are available in the discipline logs. These are all the fields that you could have in the discipline logs. We're just looking for subtypes, but you could do other things if you want to try it. But we also want to get student ethnicity or other student demographic information. That's in Table 1. That's the student database. And in this case, we're looking for actually the ethnicity field. That's why there's brackets 1 and then ethnicity. So that's the format you would need for an export. And then the one that's important to us is 8. That's the discipline log subtype. But there could be others that you would want. Now, a field delimiter, it's going to be comma. We're doing a comma separated values because we're going to do it in Excel. And we also want to put a checkbox by the surround fields. That will put quotation marks around the database. So a comma and then also surround fields. Once you have that, then you would click Submit. And it's going to ask you to save, and you're going to save your file at this point. You select where you want to save it. Now, as this file downloads, as with most things in PowerSchool, when you do an export, it'll end in a string. You can see there it's called log.export.text. Now we're going to have to rename that. Now remember, it's for Excel, so it's going to be a CSV file we want. So go to where you downloaded it. Now right-click on the file itself, and because we're going to rename it. So right-click on that file and hit Rename. And now we want to rename all of it, including the end of it. So in this case, I'm just going to call it download.csv, comma separated values CSV. When you do that, you will notice that the icon will change to be an Excel icon. That's an Excel icon. Now you double click on it and it will open up in Excel. Before we get started working with the spreadsheet, let's review what a pivot table is. In Excel, a pivot table can automatically sort, count, total, or give an average of data stored in one spreadsheet, and it will provide summarized results in a second spreadsheet. So in this specific example, we're taking our discipline subtypes and we're going to count up, break down what the students were in each ethnic group for each of our discipline subtypes. So let's take a look at our spreadsheet, and you can see in column B, there's our ethnicity information. The 1 in brackets means the student table that we exported from. And then there's our discipline subtypes. And of course, that 8 represents the database in PowerSchool for discipline subtypes. Now in the date entry, you can see the range here goes from 2011 to 2014. That's because in the export, if you remember, I didn't put any values in. So if you're looking for a specific year, you should put in some values in your export. All right, so now we're doing a pivot table. You would click on Insert tab, and then there's the Pivot Table feature. Now what will come up then after you click on that is the pivot table is going to ask you how much data you want to include, and it will automatically include all 2,000 records that we have in this one. You could narrow it down, but we want all 2,000 and we want it in a new spreadsheet. Just a reminder in Excel that columns are vertical. So A is a column, B is a column, and that rows are horizontal. So 1, 2, 3 are rows. So every cell in your spreadsheet is identified by the intersection of the column and the row. So it might be E5 or whatever. Now, let's take a look at our report. Now, we're going to do our subtype, and the subtype, we want that to be in our row labels. So I'm going to drag subtype down, and it's going to go through, and it found that of the 2,000 records, there were actually only 18 different subtypes, and it automatically combined them. Okay, so it found there's 18 different ones. Now, our column headers, we want it to be ethnicity. So as we drag and drop in the column headers, you can see it breaks it down. It found 7 different ethnicities, 1 through 7. Now, we want our totals in here. What we're looking for is the ethnicity breakdown for each subtype. So we grab ethnicity and we drag it down to the values. But be careful of the values. Right now we're looking at these numbers are actually wrong. And the reason that they're wrong is because they defaulted to the sum. So like for 7, you see here where I'm hovering over, it's 56. That means there's 8 sevens. Well, what you want to do is you want to right click on the sum and you want to change that to count. Okay, because we want to know how many 7s there were, not add up all the 7s. We want to know how many, so you change that to count. So in order to do that, you would right click on the values and hit set field values, and you would change that to count. Now you can see it says the count of ethnicity in values, and that's what you want. So now we have the right numbers. Before we had the totals, that's not what we want the count. So now that last field shows you had 70 events total, 70 argue events, and there's the breakdown for ethnicity. And you have it for each event. So now you have the numbers. Now those are the raw numbers in each one. Now what you might want to do now is you might want to convert this one so that you also have percentages. Well, you put in your headers because I want to find out for each ethnicity what the percentage was of the total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we're going to figure out, remember percentage is just the number divided by the total. So we're going to, for argument, or for argue, that's the 10 is in B5 and the total is in I5. So the percentage, it's a formula, equals the value in B5, and you'll notice it highlights in blue, divided by the value I5, which will highlight in green. So it's B5 divided by I5, you hit enter, and there's your decimal. You do the same thing for 2, and you notice it's C5, and you notice it highlights in blue, divided by I5. Now it's going to be D5, highlights in blue, divided by I5. That's your, for ethnicity 3, that's your percentage. So you'll go through each one of these. Now, some people have found in other Excel spreadsheets that instead of typing it in, they'll hit the equal sign. Remember the equal sign, it's important. But then they'll go over and click on the field, and in a lot of spreadsheets that'll put in the value. Well, not here. You'll notice that since it's a pivot table, it puts in this weird calculation. You don't want all that junk. You just want the field value. So in that case, it would be F5 divided by the total, which is in I5. Okay, and so then that will give you the decimal. And we'll go ahead and finish it out for ethnicity number 6, and which is G5 divided by I5, and ethnicity number 7 equals to, don't forget the equal sign, that's the formula, equals to H5 divided by I5. Now, you might think, well, I got to type that in for every row. No, here's a shortcut. If you highlight all of the first row, which is your formulas, and then you highlight all the places, all the values underneath that. So highlight where your first row has all the formulas, and now go down to select all the other rows. Okay, so we're gonna, as we select the other rows here, here's the shortcut to copy it in. Hit Control D. Control D will then copy that formula all the way down. And if you click on one of the cells, you'll notice that as you look at it, it will be C6 divided by I6. So it automatically changed and added for each row. So now it gives you the correct values for each one. So if you go through and just spot check, you'll notice that it actually moved down and copied those formulas. There's D6 divided by I6, which that's what I need, D6, I6, those are the values. So it automatically, so highlight the top row and then hit Control D, and then we'll copy all the values down. Now let's highlight everything because I want to change it. Hit Format Cells, right click, so highlight everything, highlight all the values, right-click, hit Format Cells, and then select Percentage. And now it's all in percentages. So you now have a spreadsheet that on the left-hand side, it gives you the raw numbers. How many students were in each category. And on the right-hand side, I've also created percentages because now I want to know what's the breakdown percentage-wise for all of the students in ethnicity and comparing it to our discipline subtypes. So that is working with a PowerSchool data in a pivot table.